ask Secretary to call roll.
Mr. Bivens? Dr. Campbell?
Here.
Mr. Crane?
Here.
Mr. Fishman?
Here.
Mr. Hale?
Here.
Mr. Heiss?
Here.
Mr. Horn? Mr. Perky?
Here.
Mr. Ramsey?
Here.
Mr. Rangel?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
Ms. Snyder? Mr. Swan?
Here.
And Ms. Wiggington? Here.
Parked on this side.
Somebody's horn's going off.
Whoever's parked on this side. It's red. It's off. You're good. It's on my side.
How many we have present, madam?
We have 12. 12.
We have a quorum present, and I call the meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is there's a couple of things that we want to remove from the agenda this morning because we found out later information about the change of the environmental codes, which may make these useless, or we'll have to revise them again in 3 months. That's item 3 and 4, to amend the protective covenants of the ECC Progress Center in Morristown Airport Industrial District. And Marshall, you want to make a motion to that?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Move that we remove items 3 and 4 from the agenda. Any discussion about that? Anybody? If not, all those in favor, let it know by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. And motion's carried.
Mr. Chairman, we need to do the minutes.
Oh, thank you. The minutes, you have the summarization.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the minutes.
Mr. Perky moves the approval of the minutes of the meeting that we held on November the 22nd. Give you just a minute. Were these mailed out, or did they just got them this morning?
They just got them this morning.
I'll give you just a minute to look at those.
Second.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Already been made, second's been made, call for the question.
Questions being called for. All those let it know by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Motion is carried. And we'll move, the next item on the agenda has to do with the consideration of approval of expansion plans for an existing industry TIF torque in the Morristown Airport Industrial District. Keith?
Yes, sir.
You want to introduce your folks and tell them what you plan to do?
Appreciate the opportunity to come before the board today, and I have with me Chris Hodges from Hodge Engineering. I've got Ron Ailey and Richard Smeltzer. I know him. Burke Ailey doing our construction, and in the we're building a approximately 17,000 square foot building on the 7 acres that are back behind the power station off of Hunter Road. And in the design phase, the covenants call for a masonry wall along the front of the building that faces the road. And based on the new codes for insulation requirements, that makes that very expensive and just not deemed well for construction. And I'll let the experts explain that here in a minute. And so we come before the board asking for a variance to go with be able to put a metal wall along that side. The building is about 250 feet off Hunter Road, and it is behind the substation, so you really cannot see it from the road at all. If you're familiar with that 7 acres is back behind, it's right behind the stormwater runoff area. So it's, again, it's back away from the road, and behind the substation, so all that, Richard or Ron explained.
Show it on the.
Oh, okay, yes.
Is it on the north side of Hunter or on the south?
No, it's south side of
On
Hunter.
the south, so it's the same side that your existing
Yeah.
facility's on,
Yes,
correct?
that's
Okay.
correct.
So from Hunter Road, it's not visible?
Well, there's a, my bearings here. We're looking, this is the substation right here,
Right,
and here's Hunter Road,
yeah,
and we're building right here.
yeah.
And it's basically 250 feet directly behind the road, behind the substation. So if you drive down Hunter Road, you may be able to see it through the substation, but it's
You'd have to look
it's-
awful hard, wouldn't you?
it's way back there.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Just for reference, this is the site the city used to use for its leaf pile. People came and got compost there. It is definitely revoked and removed from street view.
Jack, I don't have a problem with changing for that location, but with the new energy code, we're gonna be faced with this in the future at this time.
But the issue here really is not, I thought it was the energy code. The energy code is a concern because the board probably needs to know somebody somewhere, I reckon HUD or somebody, who deals with that energy code, which branch of the government?
Who is that, Greg?
Huh?
Greg Ellison with the city.
The International Building Code, ICC?
Yes, sir.
Are we on the 12 code today,
Yes,
Morristown?
yes.
Are you gonna approve the 18 code?
The 18 code will be coming up. We don't know sure when yet. It's in the approval stage at the state, so I'm assuming I'm gonna say by this fall, we'll be probably adopting the 18 energy code.
And that's the reason that we took, what they're saying is the reason that we took items 1, or whatever they were, items 3 and 4 off the agenda is we thought that those codes had already been approved and they haven't been approved. So as far as those items 3 and 4 on the agenda is concerned, they haven't been approved. So really, if you want to put it this way, revising those codes has nothing essentially to do with the item that we're discussing about waiving one of our covenants for a brick front. The issue is that this is behind the power substation, and it really serves no purpose to have a brick front type of thing. And the other side of it is the pond, which is the drainage area for the whole park. And so it doesn't need to have a brick front, essentially.
And it does add considerable cost to our construction.
Say what?
It would add considerable cost to our construction.
It adds considerable cost to their construction to do that type of thing. So I'd say in a one other sense, if you're gonna build a building, you better get it done before we find out what the code's gonna be about 3 or 4 months. So that's the issue. Randy, have you looked at these plans?
Yes, sir, I have, and they have, on another portion of the building, put a masonry, surface on that portion, I suppose to compensate for that. But as far as everything else, they've got one overhead door, but that door faces to the west, so I really don't see any problem outside of the facing to the Hunter Road, which again, as everybody's mentioned, is behind the substation. So recommend approval with the variance.
Okay, Ed, Sheriff.
Are you on design on the 18 code or the 12 code?
12 code. That's 12.
So the brick's a moot point then?
Well, no, it's.
No, it's not a moot point because the cover of the park requires a brick front, and they're asking us to waive that.
All right, so would somebody state exactly what we're being asked to approve?
Mr. Smith,
Randy, would you do
Yeah.
that, please?
recommend that you approve with the noted variance of no masonry front facing Hunter Road.
So move.
I'll second.
Mr. Smith moved, who's second? Dr. Campbell? Campbell. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, let it know by saying aye. All opposed, no. Your name's called. Call roll, Madam Secretary.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Swan?
Yes.
Ms. Wiggington?
Yes.
Dr. Campbell? Mr. Crane?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. Hale?
Yeah.
Mr. Heiss?
Yes.
Mr. Perky? Mr. Ramsey?
Yes.
And Mr. Rangle?
Yes. Unanimous, so ordered. And again, let me thank Keith and Tough Talk for following through with expanding on this site. This is a major thing. Keith and his company have worked on this, I know, for at least 2 or 3 years, and it's a major expansion for our park, and Tough Talk's doing a tremendous job, and we appreciate their expansion. Keith, thank you very much.
We appreciate the opportunity to come before the board and for passing or authorizing the variance, and we look forward to being a good industrial neighbor for a long time.
Thank you. And I don't want the board to be confused about items 3 and 4. It's the question of what we really need to have in our covenants when the environmental people go to adopt, they said section 18 or 18 revision of the code, and we thought that had been passed. We had a draft of it, and that was going to cause revision, possibly revision, or some revision of what we're doing. Ed, you want to talk to that a minute?
Well, Greg, help me if I don't get this right. The 18 code is really changing the game plan as far as energy efficiency in the building envelope, and also lighting and HVAC and all that. But it just so happened a insurance rep came by my office this week, and the 12 code, the walls are R13. The 18 code, walls are R30. The 12 code, the roof is R19. The 18 code is R32. So regardless of the masonry or glass or whatever we now accept, the insulation, the energy code is going to dictate. The brick's a moot point. And this cost, with the insulation, the method of construction, the whole cost item is going to drive construction cost up $4 or $5 a foot. The erector's going to want $1 a foot to put this insulation system in. The insulation probably going to cost 75 cents a foot. You won't have any exposed steel except the rafters inside, so things like sprinkler system and gas lines, air lines, all the ducting will be down below the rafters. You can't run it above the rafters. And all that above the rafters will be concealed. So you've got to find an attachment point. So the whole cost is going to drive cost up. This is going to dictate wall sections, roof sections. And I don't think the brick I think it's a moot point. I think because what you're going to have behind the brick is going to get the R30 on the walls is going to be a whole lot thicker.
Yeah, so anyway, that's the reason that what we just passed really has nothing to do with that, because this will be built before that's done. But we were considering, we thought that 18 had already been passed, but it hasn't been passed, so.
Greg, did I get all that right?
Yeah, you're pretty much on the money.
So I want the board to have a complete understanding. It is a concern but let me ask you this question. You people that keep up with this kind of thing. If it's gonna drive construction costs up, which it will, that much, I suppose the question that I would ask, when you talk about driving construction costs up, $5 or $6 a square foot. That's a lot of dollars. And we really, as Ed has pointed out, it won't have any difference whether it's got a brick front or a wood front or whatever it's got. In other words, if that's the code, I presume that'll be a national code. Now, you said, has somebody asked the question, you as a city adopted that code, or are we under those codes? Do you have an alternative of where you're under those codes?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, the state law requires us to be within at least 3 years of the current code. So we're gonna have to, by fall or beginning of the calendar year, adopt to the code by state mandate. That'll be the case across the state and other states across the country, so.
And that's my question, does all states across the country gonna be in the same situation we are? Because I don't wanna end up with Morristown in Tennessee, the cost being $5 or $6 a square foot, and Iowa, they're not. Yes, ma'am.
The code will be in a lot of places.
One of the things as we've been dealing with the codes, I think we've been talking about the need of accent, and that was part of the reason that a long time ago, the brick masonry was to break up just having one monolithic color. As you go throughout our parks, and even on what we approved today, the accent has been on there, and so we have been trying to make sure we've got an attractive park that keeps the covenants up. We've only got one structure in all 3 parks that doesn't have the accent on it. So I think as we look going forward with the codes of how we need to do it, realizing that materials are gonna be dictated by others above us, an unintended consequence, we need to be looking more at what's the purpose of trying to have the accent to be able to break up a building, to be able to make it attractive to somebody visiting, and what's the durability of the material. And I think that's just a part of change that we've got to deal with and modify.
The northern states are gonna be hit harder than we are, because their restrictions are more than the R32 and the R30. And they're gonna get into some kind of rigid insulation that's far more expensive than what we're gonna have to do here. We're in zone 4, Southern Florida's 1, Northern Florida's 2, and Mississippi and Alabama's 3. We're 4. We get above Kentucky, you're 5, 6, and 7. Those guys, those firms are gonna really, they're gonna take it. You may have to have a pre-insulated sandwich panel or something. There's all kinds of materials out there. And yes, Jack, every state's gotta comply, I would assume, to get federal.
Board have
permission
any
on it.
questions about that?
What's the energy savings presumably out of that?
Well, you, less heating costs, less cooling costs.
Right, but what is presumed? If
Uh,
you're gonna spend $5 a foot, what is the expert's opinion of what you're gonna save?
James, what they're really going after is they're trying to reduce the amount of radiant heat that's coming back off. They're trying to keep it inside the building, therefore you're not having energy burnt and lost. That's really what's going on, and the issues with global warming and carbon footprints, that's really a lot of what's driving this whole thing.
the rep thought 7-year payout here in this location. You know, what the LED lights and things like that are more efficient. Somebody knows more about electrical than I do. I don't know what those paybacks are on. The whole building's gonna have to be more energy efficient.
Mhm.
Lighting fixtures, HVAC systems, all of it.
I mean,
This is just deals with insulation,
it,
the building envelope.
Okay.
you go back to
I
the leads and all.
understand.
Yeah.
Well, we don't want to debate the national code here, but hopefully when this does pass, that if we need revisions of our covenants, then we will consider the covenants at that time. The next item on the agenda is consideration of an amendment to the Merchants Green Tax Increment Financing Document. And if you recall in your minutes, we did approve a document in the November 22nd meeting, which had some, we'd asked the attorneys to try to work out some things that we can include in there. and the things that we thought were acceptable needed to be changed, and so we've asked Jay to redraft that document this week, and that's what we're going to present to you at this time. And then I'll ask Jay Monahan if he will explain the differences that he has passed out. If you'll pass, Marshall and Jody, to the board members, copies of the new amendment, which in essence replaces, if you so desire, will replace the amendment that we passed in November.
So I take it the amendment that we voted on and passed was not executed.
No, that's not correct.
Pardon me?
No, that's not correct.
It was executed?
We don't know.
Well, then how can you say that wasn't correct?
Well, because he said he didn't sign it,
Well, then it wasn't executed.
but it was signed.
It wasn't
That's,
fully.
you don't want to get into that until it gets approved.
He took it back.
That's what you call an execute.
He signed it, but he took it back. So he got that.
Everybody get a copy?
Great.
Okay, Jay, you want to explain where we are?
Yeah, sure. So since the last time the board considered the previous amendment, there's a few further developments have occurred. You know, the whole basis for this document was originally the developer had agreed to do a certain number of items within the 3-year period. The 2 of those items were putting up 2 separate traffic signals, and due to a number of reasons, those traffic signals have not been put up yet and were not put up within the first 3 years. And so this modification would allow him an extension to put up those 2 traffic lights. Since the last time we met, I understand from the city that they have the items that are needed to move forward with the putting up the traffic lights. They are warranted. There's another traffic study as to one of those lights coming back within a week that'll show that one is warranted. And so we've revised the timelines as to when the developer would be required to put up those lights to be in accordance with the traffic studies. The other item that we wanted to see done before approving the amendment was the installation of 2 triangular in-out concrete medians that I understand have been completed at this time. And so that has been done since last time. And so the primary thing that this document will do will give the extension as to the traffic lights, but it also sets forth the criteria, the initial items that he at least has to get started on before he can take the next draw on his TIF. And those items are the developer will be required to submit plans for the construction of those 2 traffic lights within, as of the first light, beside the Aubreys, within 45 days of when this agreement is signed. And as to the second light, it'll be required within 45 days after the traffic study comes back, which is expected to come back next week. So he'll have to submit plans within 45 days of those 2 dates as of both lights. And then the city will have to approve those plans, and he'll have to enter into a construction contract with respect to both of those plans and post a letter of credit to secure the construction of those plans, of those lights, which is required for any public improvement that a bond or letter of credit be posted. And talking with the city, they're requesting a letter of credit rather than a bond, just due to the fact it's easier to execute on if the improvements aren't completed. A bond, a lot of times you get into a lawsuit fighting over how to enforce the obligation of the bond. A letter of credit's easier to hit if the obligations aren't complied with. This also sets a date of next Wednesday that the developer would be required to sign this amendment. And if it's not signed by then there's no further obligation for the board to enter into this amendment. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Let me ask you a parliamentary question. Should we rescind the motion that we did in November 22nd, or should this new resolution state that it replaces the one that we did on November 22nd? And if you know, if you're gonna have two
Right.
conflicting resolutions.
No, that's a good idea, if you wanna rescind the prior resolution that adopted the prior version and.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, from the parliamentary procedure, all those that, I need a motion to rescind the action approved by the board, and it was in the minutes on November the 22nd. The chair will entertain a motion.
I move approval, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Campbell moved, Mr. Rutherford second, and this is to rescind what we did on November the 22nd. Call roll, Madam Secretary.
Dr. Campbell,
Aye.
Mr. Crane,
Yes.
Mr. Fishman,
Aye.
Mr. Hale,
Yes.
Mr. Heiss,
Yes.
Mr. Perky,
Aye.
Mr. Ramsey,
Yes.
Mr. Rangel,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Snyder,
Yes.
Mr. Swan,
Yes.
and Ms. Wigington.
Yes.
The motion's carried so ordered. Now, the item that's before you is the resolution for the adoption of the new resolution for the first modification of the TIF documents, and there's a resolution before you. The chair will entertain a motion.
Question, just
Move and second, need a second?
hadn't been moved yet,
I thought you was moving.
no, that's a question.
I have a question on the table first.
Okay, question?
Yeah, just, again, from my general understanding of the mechanics of the TIF, okay? All right, so was the original development agreement, did it require the installation of signalization at the intersection of Howe Road and 11E?
Yes.
Okay,
Was there a specific time period in the document that was signed?
Well, the problem that
3 years.
we've got,
Okay.
gentlemen, the problem that we've got, let me see if I can give it to you in layman's language, and then you can ask the attorney if I'm wrong, which probably I am. But basically, the TIF document was to be completed in 2018. So the TIF document was not completed in 2018. One, a request should have been made to extend the TIF at that time. It wasn't. You could say that's the city's fault, the industrial board's fault, Marshall's fault, my fault, or somebody's fault. But the effort was not made to extend the TIF. One. Two, the state, in its infinite wisdom, has delayed from time immemorial, and when Moses came, the sinkhole on the route to exit 4, which was supposed to be completed 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Was not completed, is still not completed, the route's still not open. That's another major point as to where the development of this project is. Number 3, there was a bankruptcy of a contractor involved in a request for payment made, and all of the proper paperwork that was sent in, I'm going to say 18 months ago now, or 20 months ago now, was not suitable because the proper invoices were not there and that invoice was not paid. 4, several items that were done and not invoiced have been checked and they have been done. The city, where is it? What's that figure you used yesterday, Tim, now? You sent me a memo and I didn't get it. How much money have we spent?
Last 3 years, the TIF has generated approximately $525,000 in additional increment financing that went to pay toward the loan.
So that's a significant thing that plays into this whole thing of extending, getting the lights up and so forth. Now, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's what's been going on.
Yeah, no, it does not. So, two parts here. Who paid for the signalization at the corner of Merchants Green and 11E? Was that the developer, or was that the state, or was that the city of Morristown?
It's a developer.
The developer paid,
No,
no,
that's
thank
state
you.
of Tennessee.
Yeah, you gave the right answer, thank you.
Which, I thought you were talking about the traffic lights.
The light that's there now at Merchants Green.
Oh, yeah.
The state of Tennessee paid
Yeah.
for it, okay. So, and part of this is, I guess, philosophical, and the other part is, I understand Mr. Green agreed to it on the front end, and I'm just wondering why he agreed to put a traffic signal in on a state highway when he didn't put the one in on the major intersection, which definitely has more traffic count, et cetera, but notwithstanding that. So if he's required by the original agreement, which I suspect he agreed to, then, and that traffic signal, I guess in the broader sense you could say, produces sales of property that produce incremental revenue that pays the TIF back, then it probably is a provable expense to get reimbursed out of the TIF upon completion. So if the cost of that's $500,000 for the whole thing, at some point after he does it, he can come back and get his money back, and then the TIF goes on to repay it over a period of years from the incremental revenue of the total properties. Is my
Any
assumption
other
correct?
questions?
Oh, wait, Andy's got, and what Andy's saying is
I had a
important.
question down here.
Let him, and we need to finish on what Andy just said.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Because what he's talking about is presumably if Mr. Green does this, that he's gonna be able to get the money out of the loan for the TIF and pay for it. There's a problem with that. So Marshall, explain why there's an issue with him being able to go,
You're the one that means like Jay?
or presently, to do that.
Because that's the development agreement, we have a separate financing agreement that does not allow for that until additional development occurs and additional increments are created within that development. So essentially, if we gave him money today, he couldn't go to the bank tomorrow and say, now give me more for the red lights, even if he built them. Wouldn't be eligible based on the finance agreement to receive more money until incremental development within his area occurred.
Even though signalization is really not tied to any one specific parcel or group of parcels, correct?
Yes, because he has no increment available to service his loan. And the bank's here, David Slack here is with home, he could
That's correct.
make sure I'm not messing up.
How much, isn't there a little overage? Is there any capacity there at all?
There is an overage. The capacity is there to make another draw. It does, however, run out April of 2026 when the Walmart portion goes away at the 10-year mark. That generates the overage that would service any future debt.
So the answer, do they have capacity, and what is the capacity currently?
They have capacity to borrow $375,000 that would mature April 30th, 2026.
Okay.
Is that in addition to what he's wanting to draw now? So is it $750 that he could get,
No, it's $375.
period?
That's where I was going to, yeah.
So,
So no, the
No.
answer is really no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if he say he develops a hotel, that would, or something that has future development, then that could potentially throw off enough increment to allow for future draws.
But that goes back to what Marshall said, he has to have another project in order to fund, the request.
And I wanna be clear, the function of the TIF, if he refuses to sign, which is a possibility, if his ability to draw ends today, the TIF actually performs better than expected. It pays off early, because like David said, we have the extra increment there, so it actually is more than performing, based on the function of the TIF agreement. So it's actually doing as intended.
If he does not, of course, the TIF ends if he doesn't sign, period. But he did not put the traffic signals up. Is there recourse? Is there something we're supposed to do?
Well, the
in
other
this
thing is
regard?
about the traffic lights, and this is another confusing part of it. And Tony, correct me if I'm wrong, if you would, please. The traffic light, coming out of Aubrey's at Walmart, the city has done the traffic study for,
We have a traffic study underway, it should be complete next week.
complete next week for that one. The traffic light up on the West Andrew Johnson Highway, that's in the plan, has to do with the development of a site that's not, it's in front of that Methodist church up there, but in that particular instance up there, where the city has received some data and the city has requested other data from the developer up there, which we expect in the next week or 10 days. Is that correct?
Yes, and we've got a traffic study, and the traffic study does a good job at telling us what kind of volume, but it's not finessed enough to really to give us the turning movements that'll be generated, which is needed for the light.
All right. Now, insofar as signing the document and the revision and extending the TIF, I think 3 years, is that correct? Essentially, the parties involved have essentially agreed to that. And that's the reason we're giving them until next Wednesday to do that. It did say 3 days, but it's hard to get people in the hospital to sign papers. So the chair at this time is open.
Just one other thing, not to beat a dead horse, but again, I like to understand.
Well, I'm going to get a motion on the floor, Mr. Smith, and then you can either vote against it and we'll discuss it further. At this time, the chair will entertain a motion for approval of the resolution in front of you. And if there is no motion, then that's the end of the subject.
Let's be clear, is
Well,
Mr.
we're
Green
going to
ready to
discuss it,
sign?
James, afterward.
Well, I wanna be clear.
Well,
Is
we
Mr.
are
Green,
gonna be clear.
has he agreed to
You
sign
vote
this
yes or
document?
no. You're out of
Is he-
order. Please be quiet. The chair is
Right.
asking for a motion to approve or disapprove this motion that has been drafted by the attorney.
The amendment.
Huh?
You talking about the amendment?
The new money.
Yeah, the amendment.
Yeah, you don't have anything on the floor at this time. All you're doing is yakking about yourself, and I'm trying to get a motion on the floor to either proceed or not proceed. So the resolution that you have in front of you is to either approve or disapprove the motion. Does anybody want to make a motion?
I don't see why would we not approve it?
Well, you making a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion's been moved to approve the resolution.
It'll get things moving again, won't it?
Is there a second?
Second.
Second? All right, now the floor is open for discussion.
I'm with Dr. Campbell. I think this forces the hand of the developer. We allow the mechanism, and the developer can either sign or not.
He can
It's
take
his
it or
decision.
leave it. I mean, he's got an
Exactly.
opportunity here to move forward with the project.
Yeah, I agree.
Has he seen this?
Mr. Perkins,
Has he seen this?
wait a minute.
I don't
Please,
know.
guys, hey. Mr. Perkins.
The discussion may have answered my question earlier, particularly Marshall, but is it fair to say that there's no verbal indication that he will sign the agreement?
No, there is a verbal indication that he will.
Okay.
But without this, he's not gonna do anything.
Now, he may not.
This is
Verbal
giving him an
indication.
opportunity.
Verbal indication is that he will.
Is this in our best interest? Is this in our best interest? I guess
Well,
is my-
here, let me put it this way, guys, if y'all are against it, that's fine with me. And is, where you go is this. If he doesn't sign, and Jay, you can correct me, if Shannon doesn't sign, one, signing doesn't get it done, he's gotta do some other things, like, and the city's gotta do some things, they've gotta finish the traffic study, whatever they can. The lights are not gonna go up, according to Tony Collins, for probably 6 or 7 months anyway, for the simple reason we can't get the material for them. But, you can get the plans done, you can let the engineering done, you can let the contract, and those things are all called for on a time basis in this contract of this new amendment of being done. Now, if they're not done, then there's the implications of if you want the development finished down there, then the city would have to sue the developer to get the job done. Or you're not gonna have the traffic lights unless we exclude him from the situation and he sells the whole property to somebody else. Now, that's a possibility if you wanna do it that way. Okay, so, am I right, what you're saying, am I saying that right?
Yeah. I mean,
Go ahead, Jay.
if you approve it, it puts it back on him, he can sign it if he wants to, move forward with the lights, and he wants to have the ability to take a draw in the future. If he doesn't sign it, then I guess the decision has to be made is who's gonna put up the lights, or what's gonna happen.
But
How
it
much
does,
longer are we extending the period where he can
3
take
years.
draws?
Up to 3 years.
Up to additional 3, and it continues to allow him the 10-year trigger on the properties?
Correct.
Okay.
so the impact of him doing nothing basically just cuts off his ability to get $350,000 or $375 that he's already expended, correct?
Correct.
Any other questions? Anybody got any questions or concerns?
Just one other, is this proposed amendment more or less favorable than the original one we passed back in November
I'll ask Jay to answer that.
to the
This-
developer?
This set more or less favorable to the developer.
Yeah,
It kind of cuts both ways. It sets up more straightforward criteria that he has to comply with immediately. He's got to put forth plans, he's got to go get a letter of credit to secure his performance. I think it's probably more favorable to the board because it sets forth those criteria and it requires a letter of credit rather than a bond. It's been updated just between what's happened in the past couple of months since we've considered it.
so he probably should have executed the original when he got on, is that what you're saying?
Well, I guess.
From his standpoint.
Yeah, except it kind of, some of the dates in there, he wouldn't have been able to comply with, the completion date deadline that was in there.
10 days for something you can't do, that's BS. This is a better deal. Any other questions?
Without this deal, he has nothing under the old deal. We've rescinded that one now.
You already voted.
This is all he's got.
Any other questions? Questions, any further debate? All those in favor of passing the resolution, before you, let it know by saying aye. All those opposed, no. Call roll, Madam Secretary.
Dr. Campbell, Mr. Crane,
Yes.
Mr. Fishman,
Yes?
Mr. Hale,
Yes.
Mr. Heiss,
Yes.
Mr. Perky, Mr. Ramsey,
Yes.
Mr. Rangle,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Snyder,
Yes.
Mr. Swan,
Yes.
and Ms. Wiggington.
Yes.
It's unanimous and so ordered. And the, where's my agenda gone? Thank you. Got everything else. Any other business come before the board? Any other business come before the board?
Then we adjourn.
Been moved that we adjourn. All those in favor, let it know by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion's carried.